Hi, this is our second video on forms research. In this video, I'm going to give you some practice tips on Westlaw Next, Lexis Advanced, and Lexis Practice Advisor. So on all of these databases, except for maybe Lexis Practice Advisor, which we haven't looked at, I just wanted to remind you about the search tips we've already gone through in the prior weeks, including searching for secondary sources and browsing to Massachusetts materials, because you can use these same techniques to find forms on both Westlaw Next and Lexis Advanced. So I'm not going to spend too much time doing advanced search features. Rather, I'm going to show you just a couple of places that you can look for forms on Westlaw Next. Obviously, one of the first places is the forms database. This is the one that was mentioned in the Cali lessons. A couple of other places that you could look. Practical Law is a great source in a number of different practice areas. In addition to having secondary source materials, there are also a lot of annotated forms here. So it includes not just forms, but helpful hints as to why provisions were included and drafting hints. Another place that you may be able to find some sample agreements is this sample agreements database. What this contains are agreements that have been filed by public companies, required filings that are filed on the Edgar system. So some things that you might find, there's all different kinds of agreements, but licensing agreements, merger and acquisition agreements, employment contracts with top executives. But they're the actual agreements, so they won't be annotated. But they can give you a good sense of what these agreements should look like or provisions you might think about that you want to have in these types of agreements. So those are three places I wanted to mention to you. And like the last video, I also wanted to remind you that some of the secondary source material we have available to us on Westlaw might also have helpful forms. You might have noticed that when you were doing some research last week with secondary sources. Okay, so let's just look at that forms database really quickly. And I wanted to point out to you, once you're in the forms database, once you click on it, you can further refine your search. You don't have to search in the general search box. You can, but you can pick by state or you can pick by topic area. So if you're not finding anything great at the state level, or you found a couple of forms but they're not as in-depth as you'd like, you can also search by topic to see if there are more general forms that you're finding that are helpful. And then at the bottom you have forms by publication. So these are the publishers, and you'll notice a couple of larger sets that were mentioned in your Cali lesson, like the West Legal forms, are available here. Okay, so let's just quickly look at the Massachusetts form finder and run a very quick search. You can further limit by topic area. You can also limit by publication, most of which are various parts of the Mass Practice series. So let's pick corporations. I want to look for a sample for articles of organization. And I'm just going to, in the first search box, create my search here. So articles, and I'm going to do /3, then I don't have to worry about whether it's going to pick up the of or not. Some databases do, some databases don't. But if I do within /3, that I know it'll pick up articles within 3 terms of organization, which are what the formation documents are called in Massachusetts. And then I'm going to, I'm going to click search. And you can see, just like when we were doing the secondary source searching, even though I limit to Massachusetts for some reason, I also get national and federal material. So I'm going to limit again to Massachusetts. And click Apply Filters. Okay, so let's just look at one of these. I'm going to look at one of the mass practice ones. Let's look at the actual articles of organization in one of the mass practice sets. And you can see it's giving you a little bit of commentary and some notes. And within it, if we click into this, it's giving us a PDF form that we could use in our drafting. This is actually the form that you would get to at the Secretaries of the Commonwealth site as well. Okay, so that was searching using forms. I explained to you the sample agreements. We won't be doing a search in there today because we don't have too much time. One thing I do think would be helpful, though, is to take a quick look at practical law. So when you're in the practical law tab on Westlaw, you can search by practice area, by resource type, or by jurisdiction. So this can be really helpful to pre-limit your search. Say, let's look at the resource types that we have available to us. And under resource types, you have a couple of different things in addition to practice notes. You have things like checklists, standard documents, and also standard clauses. So for now, since we're thinking about forms, let's look at the standard documents. Again, say we were looking for the Articles of Organization in Massachusetts, we probably want to look under corporate and M&A. And again, we could run a search for the same thing. We don't have to be always browsing. You can search or browse. I'm just showing you one way to do this. And now I'm going to limit by jurisdiction to Massachusetts. And again, click Apply Filters. So here you can see I'm getting some different standard documents that you could use in Massachusetts. Let's take a look at the Articles of Amendment of Articles of Organization in Mass. I just want to show you one of the features on Practical Law. So when you're looking at the Practical Law company, you'll want to see that they have these notes that you can read. These are going to give you some tips about filling out this form. And then as you go through, they also have some notes about the different provisions that are important for you to read when you're using this type of form. And again, when you're doing your assignment, you want to note these types of helpful annotations or helpful practice features. And there's also some practice features here where you can annotate the form, you can add them to folders, download, you can open it in Word. So there's a lot of helpful features here. So if this was something you were looking at in your assignment, you'd want to note that. Okay, so that's it for Westlaw Next. I think most of you are pretty comfortable searching on Westlaw Next. Let's take a quick look at Lexis Advanced. So on Lexis Advanced, one thing I want to mention, which has nothing to do with forms, is that Lexis just introduced a new feature. Do you remember how when we were looking at originally in the first week the materials on Lexis and Westlaw, and I said, oh, you get this nice table of contents view and you can easily click through and see what's available on Westlaw? Well, they've introduced that. You may have seen a pop-up window when you go to Lexis Advanced. They've introduced a very similar feature on Lexis Advanced now called Explore Content. So you can actually scroll through by content type, by practice area, by jurisdiction. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that this might be one way that you could get into, for example, forms here, in addition to the other search techniques that we went over browsing in the first week, and Rick showed you some search tips on Lexis Advanced. So for example, say that we were looking for forms, we can look by jurisdiction in Massachusetts, or we can look by practice area here. So say we wanted forms in Massachusetts, we could click into that. And we wanted, again, articles of organization. And you can see that we're getting some different results here that might be helpful for drafting those articles of organization in Massachusetts. Obviously, you could do search by using the browse feature like we did originally when we browsed to sources the first week, or like Rick showed you, when you search using the main search bar, instead of search everything, you could click on this and you could add your jurisdiction here, Massachusetts, and you could add your category, so say forms here, and then you could run your search in the search box. So that's another option for you as well. Finally, in addition to looking in forms, you want to remember that sometimes the forms that are in the secondary materials might not pop up in the forms database. So that might be another place that you want to look on Lexis Advanced as well as on Westlaw. And I mentioned it as well on Bloomberg. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on Lexis Advanced because I want to spend some time showing you the Lexis Practice Advisor. When you go in with your law school ID, you land on the Lexis Advanced page. There are some other search tools up here. I don't know, many of you maybe haven't used them before. So the way you get to them is you click on this drop-down arrow, and then you can see these other search tools that are available for us here. So the one that I want to talk about is the Lexis Practice Advisor. So once we're in the Lexis Practice Advisor, we can run a search or we can further narrow down to practice areas. And the way we do that is right next to the top where it says Lexis Practice Advisor, the next little tab is Practice Area. And I'm going to look at business and commercial. I just want to show you one example. Let's scroll down to commercial real estate. And let's look at commercial real estate leasing. And when we get to this subtopic, what we get is a little snapshot of what's available. So there's overview documents, there's forms, practice notes, articles, that type of thing. So say we just want to look at the forms right now, we can click into there. And let's look at this office lease. I just want to show you a few features. This is something that they have called an expert form. So not everything on this database is an expert form, but if you find one of these, they can be really helpful. Again, they have those features similar to, I would say, practical law, where there's a lot of things that you can just fill in. One of the nice things, they have drafting notes. So this is the legend over here. So the drafting notes, any of these little ones that look like little pages, you can open them up and it gives you some drafting notes. Over on the side, it highlights the provision it's talking about and gives you the drafting notes. And then it also has alternate and optional clauses. So depending on who you're representing, it might suggest different things depending on who you're representing. So let's look at one of those. So this is just an alternate clause based on the base rent. So you can add it to the form or you can add it to your own text. You could add your own text as well, sorry. So if you're in one of these expert forms, you're going to want to know all these extra features that are available. So in addition to being able to browse for things on Lexis Practice Advisor, you can also use the search box above, and you can limit the search by clicking on the drop-down menu, picking the area you're interested in, and putting your search up here in the search box. So that's just a couple of tips on Lexis Practice Advisor for you. I'm not going to require it, but I'm going to put some optional videos up. If this is something you think that you'd be using in practice, I suggest you look at some of those videos created by Lexis. So that's the second video on forms. Please watch the third video, which is a short one by Bloomberg Law. And then, as I mentioned, there are some other optional videos that I've posted for you that were created by Lexis.